English made easy. Hey guys, feeling overwhelmed by the fast pace of Wordly Wise 3000? I've been there, too. Welcome to your 40-minute slow listening sanctuary. We've tuned every sentence to the classic slow English standard, giving your brain the perfect window to process and truly master every word. I'm your 1 degree north companion. Please like and subscribe for more. Ready? Let's begin. Book 5. Lesson 1. You know, in a world that's always full of noise and motion, there are these silent guardians, four-legged heroes who navigate the darkness for others. They're so much more than pets, they're living compasses, trusted partners. And today, we're going to dive into their incredible story. But here's the thing, our story doesn't begin in a peaceful home. It starts on the battlefields of history. See, our story doesn't even begin with a dog. It begins with a crisis. In the aftermath of World War I, countless soldiers were left blinded. And it was out of this darkness, this desperation, that a completely revolutionary concept emerged in Germany. What if a dog could become a person's eyes? This idea, this tiny little spark of hope, well, it was about to ignite a global movement. So let's trace how this light, born from the chaos of war, spread across the entire world. It all kicked off with one doctor in Germany, Gerhard Stalling, who opened the very first school for these canine pioneers. But an idea this powerful? There's no way it could be contained. It crossed the ocean, all thanks to an American woman named Dorothy Eustace. After she saw this incredible partnership with her own eyes, she wrote this passionate article that just captured the world's imagination. And just 2 years later, she co-founded the Seeing Eye right here in the United States, giving the movement a name and a future that would go on to change millions of lives. So, what does it actually take to become one of these guardians? It's not just about being smart. It's a unique state of mind, one that's forged through months and months of rigorous, dedicated training. The foundation of all their work is this state of constant, quiet awareness. They have to always be alert. Imagine a world-class tennis player, perfectly still, but totally ready to spring into action, sensing every tiny, subtle shift from their opponent. That's the level of focus these dogs maintain every single moment they're in that harness. And with that alertness comes this incredible ability to just filter the world out. Nothing can distract them. Think of a trader on the floor of the stock exchange. You've got bells ringing, people shouting, but they have to block all of that out to make a critical decision. In the exact same way, a guide dog tunes out squirrels, loud noises, even friendly people trying to pet them, because their partner's safety is the only signal that matters. And you can really see that focus in every single step they take together. On a chaotic sidewalk, they aren't two separate beings moving around. They move as one, as a single, fluid unit. The dog isn't just walking, it's anticipating, it's navigating, and it's constantly protecting. Really, their main goal is to create this small, moving bubble of safety. By skillfully weaving through crowds, the dog makes sure its owner is never bumped into or unexpectedly pushed. They're always anticipating the flow of people so their human partner is never jostled. But listen, none of this works without the final, crucial piece of the puzzle, the perfect match. The dog and the owner have to be deeply compatible. It's a careful science, matching everything from walking speed to personality and energy. They just have to click, because they're about to become a team for life. And all of this training, all this focus, this perfect partnership, It all leads to the ultimate test, a situation where the dog's highest loyalty is truly put on the line. Okay, picture this. They're standing at a crosswalk. The owner listens, they don't hear any traffic, and so they give that simple, trusting command to move forward. From the owner's perspective, I mean, everything seems fine. All the signs point to safety. The sounds they hear suggest the coast is clear. The decision is made based on the information they have. But the dog sees something else. A cyclist speeding silently towards them, maybe an electric car just gliding quietly down the street, a danger that makes no sound at all. So, what does the dog do? It disobeys. Despite the command from the person it trusts most in the entire world, it plants its feet. It will not budge. Now, this isn't failure. This is the highest form of success. It's a concept called intelligent disobedience, the trained ability to know when protecting your human is far more important than just being obedient. It's the ultimate act of trust and loyalty. It's everything. And that single act of disobedience at a street corner isn't just about saving one life. It's a symbol of something so much bigger, a movement that restored a fundamental human right and changed how society thinks about independence itself. To really grasp the scale of what they do, just try this. Picture the streets of a super bustling city, maybe like Ho Chi Minh City. Think about the swarms of motorbikes, the street vendors, the uneven pavement. What kind of obstacles would a guide dog have to navigate there every single minute? It's just an immense cognitive challenge. Navigating those obstacles is about so much more than just safety. It's about partnership and freedom. And you know, the very words we use reflect this. Take the word companion. It comes from Latin words that mean, with bread, literally, one you share a meal with. And pedestrian? That comes from the Latin word for foot. And this just brilliantly illustrates the true gift of a guide dog. They are the ultimate companion, and through that incredible partnership, they give their owners the freedom to simply be pedestrians again, to walk through the world with independence and with confidence. But even heroes need to rest. After years and years of dedicated service, every guide dog reaches that final, gentle chapter of their career. After about 10 years of service, these working dogs get to retire. Their harness comes off for the last time, and their only job is to just be a beloved family pet. It's a well-earned rest, full of soft beds and belly rubs and quiet, happy days. So, I've got a final thought for you, a little challenge. Imagine you're the trainer. A burly, really athletic client is waiting for their new companion. How do you find a dog that is perfectly compatible with their strength and their pace? The answer lies in the heart of this entire story, a story of trust, courage, and a bond that doesn't just guide, but illuminates the world. They aren't just guide dogs, they are truly guardians of light. Lesson 2.
All right, let's journey deep into the jungles of ancient Mexico for a story that sounds like pure fantasy, but I promise you is 100% real history. It's a story about a civilization where money literally grew on trees. Now really, just think about it for a second. What if you could walk outside and just pick your paycheck right off a branch? It's a pretty wild thought, right? Well, for one of the most powerful empires in history, this wasn't some daydream. This was their entire economy. We're talking, of course, about the Aztec Empire. Long before the Spanish ever showed up, they had built this incredibly sophisticated society, and right at the heart of their entire financial system was something most of us think of as just a simple treat. That's right. The raw ingredient for chocolate. You can forget gold, you can forget silver. In the Aztec world, the key to real wealth was the humble, kind of bitter cocoa bean. It was their dollar, their yen, their euro, all wrapped up inside one tiny little shell. Now look, to understand any market, whether it's Wall Street today or an Aztec bazaar back then, you have to speak the language. So, let's break down the key terms that made this whole system tick. First up, aroma. And this isn't just, a nice smell. In the world of high-stakes commodities trading, aroma is data. It is the first critical signal of quality, of value, and ultimately of profit. Think about it. In a modern trading pit, traders can tell so much about a batch of coffee or cocoa just from that deep, rich aroma. It tells them about its potency, its origin, and if it's ready for the global market. It's literally the smell of money. So what's the opposite of that rich, valuable aroma? Well, it's this word, bland. In any market, bland is like the kiss of death. It signals low quality, zero excitement, and most importantly, low value. It is the one word no trader ever wants to hear. And you know what? This concept applies directly to modern finance. A bland investment portfolio, one without different and exciting assets, is just, it's flat. It's not going to give you those powerful returns you're looking for. It just doesn't have any character. And this brings us to what might be the single most important concept in any economy ever, equivalent. How much of this is worth that? Establishing an equivalent value is the bedrock of all trade. It's everything. The very language of trade is built on these ancient roots. Just look at extract and export. They both start with X, which means out. But one is about pulling a resource from the earth, while the other is about carrying it across borders. It's a small difference in words, but it's a powerful distinction that defines all of global commerce. So, let's see how this entire economic system was basically fueled by the taste buds of one of history's most powerful rulers. Because behind this massive market was one guy with an absolutely insatiable appetite. 50. What does this number mean? It's not some interest rate or a stock price. Nope. It's a measure of pure, unadulterated royal indulgence. 50 cups in a single day. The Aztec king Montezuma had an epic craving for this bitter, spicy chocolate beverage. And hey, when the king wants to consume that much of your national currency, it creates this huge demand that ends up shaping the entire economy. And here's where you can see the real-world value of those beans. Just look at this exchange rate. A rabbit could be purchased for 10 beans, but an enslaved person? That cost 100 beans. What that means is a human life was considered equivalent in value to just 10 rabbits. It's a really sobering look into their economic reality. Okay, so let's do some quick market math. If 50 beans gets you 5 rabbits, what's the equivalent price for just 1 rabbit? Yep, you got it. 10 beans. It's simple market logic. Doesn't matter if you're trading cocoa beans or tech stocks. So, how on earth did this bitter bean, used as money and for a spicy drink, become the sweet, delicious treat we all know today? Well, that journey is an amazing story of agricultural and industrial transformation. The process is really a masterpiece of change. It all starts with fermentation, which is this week-long chemical reaction that's totally crucial for developing that signature aroma. Then, after roasting makes the shells brittle, the really valuable cocoa butter is extracted. And finally, all those components are combined to create the chocolate that we love. It's a really complex journey from a simple farm to that finished bar. And it all starts right here, inside these big pods growing in these specific tropical climates. You'll find a cluster of those precious beans. This right here is the source, the biological asset that powered an entire empire. Okay, now let's put on our modern financial analyst hat for a second. You have to ask, why did this work so well? I mean, why use a bean for money? The answer is surprisingly brilliant. The genius of this system is that it wasn't just money. It was a self-regulating system. Because it was consumable and it was perishable, you couldn't hoard it forever, which kept the currency moving. And since you could only cultivate it in very specific tropical regions, it was incredibly hard to counterfeit. It's actually a brilliant economic model when you think about it. And they were masters at cultivating it. This technique, something we now call intercropping, just goes to show their deep understanding of agriculture. They weren't just growing money, they were building a perfect microclimate to protect their most valuable asset. All right, now it is your turn. You've seen how the Aztec economy worked. You've learned the language of their market. So let's put all that knowledge into practice. So here is your challenge. First, if you had 20 cocoa beans, what would you purchase? Maybe a couple of rabbits? Or would you save up for something bigger? And second, I want you to take 3 of the words we've talked about today and use them to describe your favorite modern beverage. Think about its qualities and the craving that it satisfies for you. Let's just end on this thought. It sounds like a line from a fairy tale, but it was their reality. The Aztecs actually lived in a land where money grew on trees. They built a powerful empire on a currency that was organic, perishable, and, well, delicious. It kind of makes you wonder, what other secrets of economics are hiding out there in the natural world, just waiting for us to rediscover them?
Lesson 3. You know, we're not just telling a story about ancient bones today, we're actually analyzing the rise and fall of one of the longest, most successful empires in Earth's history. This is a story about apex predators, it's about global markets, and it's about a catastrophic event that forced the ultimate reinvention. Okay, let's dive right in. So when you think dinosaur, one name just stomps into your mind, right? Tyrannosaurus rex, the gigantic tyrant lizard king. He's the pop culture icon, the monster from all our nightmares. But what if I told you the king was basically a pretender? What if the true apex predator, the ultimate assassin of that age, was a creature you've maybe never even heard of? I mean, let's start with the king's most obvious flaw, those arms. Let's be honest, they were puny. Seriously. They were shockingly short, surprisingly weak, almost a comical feature on this otherwise terrifying beast. These were just not the arms of an undisputed champion. Now, meet the real contender, the Utahraptor. Yeah, it was smaller than a T-Rex, but it was an absolute masterpiece of predatory engineering. We're talking large, powerful arms, and they were equipped with 10-inch claws. And just look at those hind legs, each one had a 12-inch hooked claw built for one single purpose, to slash its prey. This thing was built for a fight. Really, there's only one word that can sum up a beast like this: ferocious. This wasn't just some animal, it was a living weapon. The Utahraptor, it really represents the absolute peak of dinosaur evolution when it comes to hunting. It was a perfect killing machine. And in their world, being a carnivore meant you were living on a knife's edge. You were either a ferocious hunter, or you were prey. There was absolutely no in-between. But to really comprehend the true scale of this story, we've got to zoom out, way out. The battles between these predators, that was just one small drama playing out on a much, much bigger stage. We're talking about an empire that dominated the entire planet for over 150 million years. Just let that number sink in for a second. Human beings, for comparison, we've only been around for a couple of million years. The dinosaurs' reign was an almost unimaginable stretch of time. We talk about the duration of things all the time, right? The duration of a business cycle, or how long a tech company stays on top. We measure those in years, maybe decades if they're lucky. The duration of the dinosaur empire it dwarfs all of human history. To them, our entire civilization would be nothing more than a momentary flash. But here's the wild twist that this timeline shows us: our two titans, they never met. Not even close. The Utahraptor was long extinct by the time T-Rex ever showed up. All of the Utahraptors had been dead and gone for 50 million years before the first T-Rex even walked the earth. They were kings of completely different eras. And then, about 65 million years ago, the entire global system faced an event that nobody could have possibly predicted. If we were talking economics, this was the ultimate black swan, a catastrophic, world-altering shock that changes everything. The cause was an asteroid. A massive piece of rock from outer space slammed into the planet, right where the Yucatan Peninsula is today. The impact was so gigantic it left a crater nearly 200 miles across. And the explosion itself, that was just the beginning. The biggest consequence was darkness. The impact threw so much dust and debris up into the atmosphere that it completely obscured the sun. And not just for a day, we're talking weeks, maybe even months. And this, it triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. With the sun completely blocked out, global temperatures just plummeted. Photosynthesis stopped. Plants started dying off on a massive scale. So the herbivores that ate the plants starved, and the carnivores that ate the herbivores, they soon followed. The entire global food chain just collapsed. In this new, brutal market, there was only one goal: survive. To simply continue existing. All the old rules were out the window. Size and strength weren't assets anymore. They were huge liabilities. Only the most adaptable had any chance at all. So put yourself there for a moment. Imagine you're a survivor in this freezing, dark world. All the food is disappearing. Your body needs a ton of energy just to stay warm. What is your only option? What do you do? Well, the gigantic creatures, the ones that needed tons of food just to fuel their massive bodies, they were doomed. Their size made it impossible to adapt. They went extinct. But the smaller, more efficient creatures, the ones that could hide, maybe hibernate, live on scraps, they endured. And just like that, the great dinosaur empire was over. Or was it? What if we've been thinking about extinction all wrong? What if it's not really an end, but a catalyst for the most radical reinvention you can imagine? A pivot, forced by the most extreme market crash in the history of the planet. And the evidence for this wild idea comes from fossils found in China. They found a creature called Sonornis, a small, feathered dinosaur that could perch and fly. And it points to this incredible evolutionary leap. It suggests that some dinosaurs didn't just die out, they found a new way forward. This creature, this ancient ancestor, it might be the direct link to the birds we see all around us today. Think about it, the scales became feathers, the snout became a beak, those heavy bones became hollow. The dinosaur didn't just die, it evolved. It took to the skies. And when you look at it that way, it becomes so evident that the dinosaurs never truly left. They just transformed. Every single pigeon you see in the park, every eagle soaring through the sky, they are the living descendants of that ancient, ferocious empire. So I'll leave you with a final thought here. If you had to choose just one fossil to preserve in a museum, one that could tell this entire epic story, from dominance to collapse to reinvention, which dinosaur would you pick? And how would you justify that choice using just 3 of the words we've explored today? Think about it. The answer might just reveal what part of this incredible history matters most to you. Lesson 4.
It's September 1620. You're looking out at the cold, gray Atlantic Ocean, and out there you see a single wooden ship pushing its way west. Just a tiny speck of humanity against this huge, unforgiving sea. On board that ship are 102 souls, and they have bet everything they have on this single journey. For them, there's absolutely no turning back. This voyage, it's their last best hope. But it's also a desperate gamble against some pretty impossible odds. So this is the incredible story of the Mayflower. A journey that really became about survival against all odds. Let's dig into how they actually managed to pull it off. Now our story doesn't really begin on the ocean. It starts with the incredibly painful choice that pushed them out to sea in the first place. The decision to leave their entire world behind. To depart. It sounds simple, right? It just means to leave a place. But think about what that really meant for them. On September 6th, 1620, the Mayflower did just that, pushing off from Plymouth, England. For everyone on board, this wasn't just about leaving a port. It was about launching themselves into a completely unknown world. So you have to ask yourself, what could possibly make someone take a risk that big? Well, it really boiled down to 2 powerful reasons. For some of them, the group we now know as the Pilgrims, it was all about the freedom to practice their faith without being persecuted. For the others, the motivation was, well, more practical, a shot at a new life, the promise of actually owning land in America. But here's a really interesting wrinkle. This was not a clean break. As one account from the time puts it, they did not want to sever all connections with England. See, this wasn't just some quest for freedom. It was a high-stakes business deal. They had borrowed a ton of money to fund this trip and were legally on the hook to repay their investors through trade. So the financial pressure was just immense, right from day one. So once they're out at sea, the challenges completely change. It's no longer emotional. It's purely technical. They were now facing this terrifying new reality. How do you navigate a massive, empty ocean with tools you know you can't fully trust? So, to navigate a ship back in the 17th century, they used a method called dead reckoning. Basically, it involved measuring the position of the sun and stars to guess your location. But there was a huge problem. They had no way to accurately measure longitude, how far east or west they were. So it was this really complex dance of observation and calculation, and that was their only guide in that vast emptiness. Just look at this comparison. On the left, 17th century navigation was all about approximation. Their tools were pretty crude, which meant every single reading was basically a bit of a guess. Now contrast that with modern space exploration on the right, where being off by a tiny fraction of a degree means you miss your planet entirely. The Mayflower's crew was working with a massive margin for error, and any single mistake could have been fatal. Now imagine what happens when you can't even see the sun or the stars. When clouds rolled in, which they often did, they were literally sailing blind, just adrift in this vast, featureless expanse of gray water, with no way of knowing if they were even pointed in the right direction. The psychological stress of that constant uncertainty, it must have been unbelievable. And then, just when you think it couldn't get any worse, that constant uncertainty turned into active, life-threatening danger. The journey was about to turn on them in the most violent way you can imagine. After a surprisingly calm start, the Atlantic decided to show its true colors. The weather didn't just get a little worse. It began to completely deteriorate. The gentle breezes vanished, replaced by a violent fury that shattered any peace they might have felt. They weren't just dealing with bad weather. They were facing gales. Now a gale is a very, very strong wind with speeds between 32 and 63 miles per hour. That is a force of nature that can rip a modern house apart. Never mind a small wooden ship from the 1600s. The human cost of this was just devastating. As one passenger later wrote, "Strong gales rocked the Mayflower. Many despaired of ever reaching America." You can almost feel the exhaustion in those words. The constant physical beating the ship took was matched by the emotional one the passengers felt. And hope, the very thing that fueled this journey, was starting to run out. And yet, Even in all this chaos, the basic cycle of life and death continued in the most extreme way. One passenger died of a fever and was buried at sea. Their body was just given over to the same waves that were tormenting the living, and at the same time, in that same storm-tossed ship, a baby boy was born. His parents named him Oceanus, life and death, right there side by side on a tiny ship in the middle of nowhere. Then, after 65 agonizing days, a glimpse of land. Can you even imagine the relief? The accounts say that despair was replaced by immense jubilation. Just an explosion of pure joy after 2 months of non-stop misery. But that jubilation, it didn't last long. They had survived the ocean, sure, but arriving in the wrong place created a brand new crisis, one that threatened to tear their little society apart before they even set a single foot on shore. So just how far off were they? Well, those ridiculously strong winds had blown them about 500 miles off their intended course. Their goal was Virginia. This was not Virginia, and that was a huge, huge problem. Their legal right to settle, their charter, was for Virginia, but here they were, way up on Cape Cod. Legally speaking, they were in a lawless land, so the question hanging in the air was, what now? Do the rules even apply anymore? And this is where their genius for survival really kicks in. Faced with a situation that could have easily turned into chaos, they didn't fall apart. Instead, the 41 male passengers got together and created a government, right there on the spot. They drafted what we now call the Mayflower Compact. It was a simple but profound agreement that said everyone, pilgrims and non-pilgrims alike, would follow the laws they created for themselves. This wasn't just a list of rules. It was one of the first experiments in self-government in the Americas, and it was born out of pure necessity. So their new social contract was a brilliant solution to their legal problem. But you can't eat a contract, and it won't build you a shelter. Winter was closing in fast, and the clock was ticking on both their physical survival and those financial debts they still had to pay. They finally found a good spot for their settlement, and the name it already had, given to it by earlier explorers, must have stirred up some really powerful feelings of nostalgia. Plymouth, the exact same name as the port they had departed from what felt like a lifetime ago. So when you really step back and look at the whole story, it's so clear that this was so much more than just a trip across the ocean. It was a deep, profound test of human resilience. It was an act of groundbreaking legal innovation. And underneath it all, it was always a high-stakes financial gamble where failure meant absolute ruin. Which brings us to a final thought for you. Imagine your voyage is to Mars, a long, isolating journey into the unknown. What's the one item you would bring with you to fight off that feeling of nostalgia for Earth? And, using 3 words from our story today, how would you describe your final destination? It's something to think about.
Thanks so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an update. I'll see you in the next one.